I want to share a few thoughts and ideas that I recently had and to kind of come up to a certain concept. Um, yeah, it was a kind of cluster of ideas that popped up in my brain, and they started to form into like a bigger picture of things that I have been dealing with or that I have been interested in and trying to find answers on for quite some time. I think it's like 4 or 5 years or so, and I've been kind of looking for answers to these questions. And it started when I was working as a civil service guy in a place where people would come out of the psychiatric um, hospitals, like in a acute treatment, and then they would come out of that treatment, and then they wouldn't have anywhere to go, like any place to live or any family to return to. And so I worked in a place where people like that could come to us and live there in like shared flats, and we would kind of like help them with washing and eating properly and getting their stuff done, like bureaucratic stuff. And I question like the whole system of psychotherapy and the whole yeah, mental health stuff. Um, and already there I could see that what I was missing in the whole system was prevention. Like I couldn't see anywhere that people would try to inform the broader public about prevention or how to prevent mental health issues. Um, so I was kind of struck by that realization that there isn't actually anything in place that people are informed about. Like any information's out there. You just have to search it yourself. Like if you want the information, you can get it, but then you have to kind of like scrap it together over a few books, over multiple, talks on the internet, YouTube. You can inform yourself quite good, but you have to do it yourself. You have to really do your homework if you want to know what's going on, or where these mental health issues are coming from. And I think also there's not like a unified theory, which is also a problem. Like I'm not really blaming mental health institutions to not do prevention, because it's also a kind of tricky thing to kind of boil it down to one root and then propagate that this is the cause for all um, mental health issues. So that's also a problem that should not be ignored. But at the same time, I feel like there should be some information out there. Like there should be some information on how to prevent these. Yeah, there should be some information on how to prevent like the most extreme cases, like or even information on how we think this stuff can develop, like psychosis or schizophrenia. And I know there's so many different theories on how this stuff develops, but I came across information which I kind of added together to build a concept which seems pretty solid to me. And I kind of want to, because I think there's not enough opinions in the steaming pot. I will just add my shit as well and throw out another opinion on how this stuff develops, and then yeah, let's see how people react to it and what people think of it. Um, so what I came across is a book which I think it's quite amazing. It's called um, Healing Developmental Trauma, and it's written by Lawrence Heller. That's an American guy who studied developmental trauma, or like really went deep into the subject and the matter of developmental trauma. And there's also a woman, I can't recall her name right now. I maybe post it in the comments if I don't forget it. To who added to the book, or it was a collab, so sort of. And yeah, but by the time now, I think close friends of mine or my family probably thinks I'm paid for promoting this book because I'm talking about it so much. Yeah, it's just like all the thoughts or all like my ideas kind of like stem from this place, or like wrap around or like build a cluster with it. So it's kind of like it's just since I read it, it's not going out of my mind, like how how deeply insightful this book is on the human condition that we live in today. Um, So I really want to quickly share what's in the book if you don't know it. So the concept Lawrence Heller describes in this book, it's that developmental trauma, if you experience developmental trauma as a child, which means that you don't get your needs that you have as this child in a certain age, if you don't get these needs satisfied, you develop a certain kind of survival strategy, which also implies a certain worldview or a certain self-image that you will carry on from there on, and that will kind of like form your perception of the world and yourself in adulthood as well. So basically, what Lawrence Heller does is he puts it into like five eras or like time frames in which things can happen, and it's like these have names, and the names of these time frames is basically the most important need that should be satisfied at that time in a child's life. And so the first need, or the first like time frame is the time frame of connection, and that begins with like the impregnation, um, and the pregnancy phase of a woman, and then also kind of draws into, like, I think it's 1 year or so into like after the child is being born. And in that time frame, the child really needs to feel a safe connection to the mother, like really experience that the connection to the mother is a safe thing. So if the child, for example, has or grows up in a place where, or in a mother, like is in the womb of a mother that constantly fears something, like for example fears that the child might be ill, or might be, I don't know, that something might happen to the child, then this child doesn't actually experience a healthy or secure connection to the world and to the mother, like first to the mother and then to the world. So to give you an example, that's what actually happened to me. So when I was in my mother's womb, she actually was scared all the time that something might happen to me. And now that I'm an adult, there's what I experience is a constant kind of like basic subconscious, like pre-conscious fear that's always there. Like there's like a basic fear to my personality, or whatever it is, like to my perception of myself and the world. And it's also I kind of sense like a gap between me and the rest of the world, or between me and the people. That's probably why I feel so alien a lot of the time. So, and I think there's a lot more stuff that is going on that is not yet conscious in my experience. So I can't really tell what else there is to my worldview and to my perception of myself and the world that is caused through this early childhood experience trauma. Like I've never experienced a secure relationship, in a sense. Like I don't want to cry over that right now, in a sense of that this is bad or this is wrong. I just want to state, like, the state I'm in right now, or the experience that I have right now, is like limited by this early experience that I had, because what I did in that childhood um, state was that to really be able to survive in a environment where there is like constant fear, is that I have to limit my nervous system in a way. Like my nervous system has to shut down parts of it, because it's not able to handle that constant fear all the time. That's just not possible, because the nervous system of the child is actually dependent on the nervous system of the mother. And if the nervous system of the mother is not regulated well, so I can adapt to a regulated system, then I, as the child, has to kind of shut down my nervous system, or like, I don't know, cut certain parts of it off, so that I be able to survive and not just collapse. Like there's just too much energy in that small nervous system to survive. So I basically I basically come to Earth, like I'm being born with a limited, or like a dysregulated nervous system in the first place. And that's not only happening in the first like time frame, like that connection time frame. There are also four more, and it's kind of like the same thing there, but there's different needs, different things that should be satisfied for the child to develop properly and healthy. Um, that's basically like a rip off of the whole um, theory that is presented in the Healing Developmental Trauma, that book by Lawrence Heller. And the thing that strikes me about this theory or that concept is that actually, if you experience such a thing in your childhood, it's not just that you have like a part of you which is out of control or which is kind of like dysregulated or something like that. It's kind of like your whole being and your whole personality develops around that survival type. That's what it's called in the book. That's what Lawrence Heller calls it. It's a you build a survival type to kind of deal with that trauma that you had, and that survival type becomes your personality and your worldview. So, for example, if I wouldn't have the consciousness and the insights, like the information that I had been given through that book, I wouldn't be able to make out the difference between my experience as being affected by a early childhood trauma, to anybody else's experience. I would think they're all experiencing the same thing, and that is completely normal. That I feel a gap between me and other people, and then I feel a constant level of fear in my experience. So it's not just something like, it's not just something that could be put away. It's like really, really deeply rooted stuff. And then if you combine that with like looking at at the society that we live in today, and what we as a society, as a collective, experienced in the last, I don't know, even just 100 years, that's quite fucking traumatic. Like if you look at what we had in the Second World War, and you think that's not traumatic for a whole population, I don't know what should be traumatic for a whole population. So I think that we have like a shock trauma, like a collective trauma in the population, which leads to us not being like parents that bring up children that have like the possibility to develop like as a healthy human being. So I think this is a collective thing. I think everybody on this planet is affected to some degree by this early childhood developmental trauma thing. So we kind of live in a world where most of our concepts, most of our worldviews are based on survival type. They are based on things that we learned in early childhood, things that kind of developed as our personality, and then like individuals, and then fed in back to the society, like fed into the collective mind, fed into the collective behavior that we have as human beings. I think that this is what's happening. And I can see it in a lot of places. Like I can see it in a lot of things that we do as a collective, in a lot of behaviors we have, in a lot of systems that we have. There are these concepts, and if you read the book, if you read Healing Developmental Trauma, you can see, like, you can read the symptoms, or what makes this survival type, like how do you act if you have that survival type, and then you can look to society, you can look to what's happening in a collective way, and you can see, oh yeah, that's what's going on, that's what's going on, that's what's going on, if I can say it. Yeah. So where did I wanted to go with that? Yeah, back to like the mental health issue that I started off with. I think what I'm missing in the mental health institutions, or in like the research that is done, or is like the depth I can see in healing developmental trauma, in the concept that is brought up there, that is like pointed out in the book, is not integrated, or is not being used by therapists or by mental health institutions. I can't see that happening. I and I'm not sure. Maybe it's happening right now. Maybe there are researchers that are going to that direction, or maybe there are therapists that are going to that direction. But at the time I was working in that place, and I had like an insight into the whole mental health institution stuff. I couldn't see that anywhere. I couldn't see that happening anywhere. So I'm wondering, like, if we have a worldview based on survival styles, then that also raises a question that probably a lot of people will get angry at me if I raise this question, but I will do it anyway. And it's, if we live in a world and we have a society that is completely based, because we all are affected to some degree by these survival type attitudes and perceptions and worldviews, if we have a society that is based on survival types, and we have therapists that function inside of this society to adapt people to this society or to help people live inside of this society, then the question is, how sane are the therapists? Because they have the same upbringing, they have the same things they learn that we learn. And it might be just a question of to which degree they are affected by these survival types. And when I look around and look at people I know and look at families I know and look at like groups I know, I just see that everybody is affected to some degree by this stuff, by this collective trauma. And so the question is, if we don't take into account that stuff, that what is happening, and there's no like collective consciousness around that stuff, then how much sense, or like how much is there a point in therapy? And I also don't think that, like, there's another issue I wanna kind of talk about for a minute or so, is that a lot, like, there's information out there that kind of shows that, for example, schizophrenia or psychosis and stuff and depression can be linked to genetics. Like, there's evidence that people, like families with genetics that are kind of with certain genetics, are more prone to depression or schizophrenia or psychosis or whatever. And I don't think that's actually a genetic thing, because since HIV, since AIDS, we know that there's also the possibility for RNA to code DNA. And since Bruce Lipton and his epigenetic stuff, we know that even experience can change DNA. So RNA coding DNA is not a out of mind thing. That's actually possible. And what I think mental health issues are is also not a psychological problem. I don't think it's a psychological problem. I think it's a consciousness problem. Like, it's even a step back. It's even, and what is consciousness? Maybe we have to like define what consciousness is. For me, what I see consciousness is your ability to participate actively with the present moment. Whoa, my computer is doing strange stuff. So your ability to participate actively with the present moment, that's what consciousness is. And when I talk about developmental trauma, what I see there is that the body stores. Holy shit. Okay, it's kind of like overloaded. Shit. Yeah, I'll give it a break and then I come back in a minute or so. Okay, back again. So if this stuff is true, like if it's actually the case that most of human beings are affected by survival styles of early developmental trauma, then that stuff is stored in the body. Like, our nervous system is the thing that was like in control of our states and regulated the energy that was moving through our body. And if that nervous system was affected in early childhood by a developmental trauma thing, then it actually kind of like did something. I don't know what it does. I don't know. Like, I haven't an idea how this stuff works, but it did something to shut down certain aspects of ourselves, and these parts weren't able to do the the development that they should have been able to do for us to grow into healthy adults. So if that's the case, then our body is kind of like stuck in the past. There's stuff stored in our body, like maybe in the nervous system, maybe in the fascia, maybe somewhere. There are multiple theories on how this stuff from the past is stored in our body. It's also stored in the mind, but I guess the body is like a good place to start on, like to get a hand on what's happening, and the experiences that we have and what they create in our perception. Um, so that stuff that is stored in our body, if we have the consciousness, so the ability to stay present and actively participate with the present moment and our experience in the present moment, and we have the knowledge, like the information that is out there around developmental trauma, around mental health stuff, that is like the thing, that information that I'm presenting you right now, and also like a bit of Jung maybe, because there's also archetypal stuff that is happening in there. Um, then I think we are able, with enough consciousness, to actually see these states or see these experiences, see these perceptions for what they are. And I think that's actually the main route to go for healing, like for mental issue, mental health issues healing. It's not, I don't think it's a psychological problem, like changing your mindset. I don't think that's the way to go. I think consciousness is the way to go. The ability to stay present with the current experience. And I think that's also why psychoanalysts seem to be so slow and kind of like not that effective. It's because it's so much focused on the past. It can actually be re-traumatizing, because if you go back into your past and you relive this experience, but you don't have you're not consciously rooted in the present moment, that stuff will be re-traumatizing for sure, because these are intense emotions, these are intense states to be in. So I think the way to go is like consciously present with stay consciously present with the moment, what's happening right now, and from there on explore into these experiences, these states, because they're here consciously all the time. Sorry, they're here all the time, and we can consciously perceive them if we focus on it. If we actually take a closer look at what's going on in our relationship, for example, in our relationship to the world, for example, we can look everywhere in our current experience. There's so much information. It's crazy. It's so rich. Like the stuff is so complex. But if we have the information, we can actually kind of like f- put it into small portions so we can digest it and get out of these states. So I believe that it's actually possible with consciousness, with the ability to stay present in your current experience, and with the information that we have around developmental trauma, and also like all that stuff that is out there you can read about psychology and meditation and stuff like that. With that information, like you can go with Lawrence Heller, Healing Developmental Trauma, with a little bit of Jung and a little bit of Keegan, and you can kind of like create a worldview or a concept for yourself that allows you to heal yourself from physiological, from mental health issues, and consciousness problems. I don't know if that's actually a thing, but I think that is possible, and you can do that with consciousness, because that's all interconnected. Like there's no such thing as a separate sickness. So everything you experience in your body is somehow related to things that are happening in your mind, and that is somehow related to your consciousness, because your ability, or like your state of consciousness, is what's allowing you to see things or experience things in your body. So if you heighten your consciousness, if you expand your consciousness, you will get more aware of things that are happening in your body and your mind, and you may see more connections that are happening. So I think by heightening the level of our awareness, by heightening or by expanding our consciousness, we are actually able to have a deeper look and a better understanding of physiological and mental problems. Um, and getting out of that survival style thing. Like it's And that's why also why I think Jung was actually so close to the truth that I'm kind of exploring right now, that with his individuation process, with his like his therapy, he was actually confronting people with stuff from their past, with their shadow, with suppressed emotions, with everything, but it had that positive focus on the present moment and the future. And I think that's what rooted people in their own myth. Like that's what the individuation process is. It's actually rooting yourself in your own myth, in your own hero's journey. And with that focus you have, you can actually go into that past experiences. You can live through them, but you need the consciousness. You need to be able to hold the consciousness while being there in these past experiences, with the focus on the present moment and the future, to aim at the best possible outcome, to aim at your best self, like what you can become. That needs to be in mind. You can't rely on anything else than that. I think that's the only way to go with consciousness and that focus on the future, like on your best version of yourself. Yeah. I don't know if I got completely off topic right now. Let me check for a second. Or if there's anything to add. Yeah, so to kind of bring that back to psychotherapy and the mental health situation we have today, um, the point I want to make is I don't want to make the point that our mental health situation that we have today is bad. Like, what I see happening is a lot of the time in therapy, what the people get is like coping mechanisms. Like, they get strategies to deal with what they're um, dealing with, what they're experiencing. And they get strategies to um, kind of stabilize themselves in these experiences. And that's perfectly fine. Like, that's so good that we have that in place. The idea that I want to promote, and I feel like this urge to promote this idea, I have no idea why, is I want to promote the idea that there's actually a more basic, like a more fundamental level, that is collective in nature, that causes these mental health issues. Um, so that there's something in place in our collective consciousness which creates in these extreme cases, like things like schizophrenia, psychosis, and depressions, um, and that these extreme cases who then need therapy are actually just like the extreme of a thing that is going on with every individual that is living on this planet. So the idea that I want to promote is that it's actually possible to not just treat symptoms in a way like um, dealing with strategies and coping mechanism to find a way to cope with these experiences that we have, but there's actually a way to go deeper and to heal in a place where this stuff stems from. And I see it as like I see it as the developmental trauma things that are happening, and this is like a collective thing because we, from generation to generation, this stuff is like given from one person to the next. So it's, of course it's in the family. Like, of course it's in the family if somebody has psychosis. It's not the genes. It's how you are dealt with as a child. So of course it travels through the family. And the point I wanna make is that it's actually possible to, with the right mindset or with the right state of consciousness, it's actually possible to go back into these states and relive them, but not create re-traumatization, but actually create uh, a new reality for yourself. You can actually get beyond that state in which your nervous system is collapsed because of early childhood trauma. You can actually get beyond that and become a more healthy human being. And I think like this is also just a theory, like the same way that all the other theories on how this stuff develops are theories. It's just a hypothesis, and I don't like I can't tell if any of this is like better or worse or whatever. Like I don't do that kind of judging one against the other or like evaluating one against the other theory. I just go for like my value is the theory that works best, that has the most positive effect on individuals, and then through the individuals has the most positive effect on the collective. That's the measure I go with. And this stuff works so well for me, and that's also why I want to share this, why I want to kind of like raise the discussion around stuff like that, around yeah, consciousness, around psychoanalysis, blah, 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 around psychotherapy, around the things that we have in place, around our society's values. Like that's a crazy broad topic to discuss, and it's so rich, like it's so abundant in information and stuff we can find out about ourselves. So that's kind of the point I want to make. That I see possibilities that go beyond just treating symptoms, and that go beyond just, you know, dealing with the cards that we're dealt, so to speak. I'm not sure if I'm kind of like was able to bring the whole picture of what I had in mind. So just let me know in the comments if you have like if you feel like I made a jump somewhere, or you can't get a connection that I'm making in my mind. Just leave a comment and I'm glad to reply or to add another video. And I'm surely will kind of like go back to that topic, because it's, yeah, it's pretty much everything I kind of like think around or mental with. So there will sure come other videos on that stuff as well. So yeah, I'll leave it with that for the moment, and thank you so much for watching, and hit subscribe if you liked it. And I hope to see you in another video. And leave a comment if you have a question. Just do it, and I'll be happy to reply. Thank you so much. See you another time.